When you think of the Reformation of the 16th century, who's the first person that you think of? Now, you might not be familiar with Church Reformation of the 16th century, but those of you who are, you might be thinking of this guy right here, Martin Luther. Through my research, guys, I've come to realize that Martin Luther was a key instrument in God's plan for reshaping or reforming the Catholic Church. Martin Luther brought reform to the Catholic Church of the 16th century by challenging the Church's status quo. And in the next few minutes, we're going to look at how Martin Luther challenged the Church's status quo by performing two actions that Martin Luther took in challenging the Church's status quo. The first one was Martin Luther nailed his 95 Theses to the Wittenberg church door in Germany. The second action that Martin Luther did was he translated the New Testament into the common language of the time. That was in German. But who was Martin Luther? I told a few people when I was doing this informative speech that I was going to do this on Martin Luther, and they said, is that Martin Luther King Jr. you're going to do that on? And no, it's not Martin Luther King Jr. This is another Martin Luther. The Martin Luther was a Catholic monk in the 16th century. He wanted desperately to find peace with God. He would often sleep on concrete floors. He would even whip himself. He would do many things. He would confess his sins 20, 30 times a day, trying to find peace with God. But it wasn't until Martin Luther became a professor of theology at the University of Wittenberg, then he found peace with God. When he was preparing for one of his lectures, he came across Romans 1:17 that says, "The just will live by faith." And it was here that Martin Luther realized that he couldn't sleep on enough hard floors. He couldn't whip himself enough to earn favor with God, but that the just will live by faith, and that it's by faith alone that we're saved. Around this time in Rome, Pope Leo X wanted to build St. Peter's Church, or better known as St. Peter's Basilica, a church in Rome. And one way that he was going to use to get money was the selling of indulgences. And Pope Leo X was going to send one man right into Martin Luther's backyard. It was this man right here, John Tetzel, was selling indulgences. An indulgence was just a piece of paper, like down over there in the bottom, that was sold from the Catholic Church to people, basically for the forgiveness of sins. You buy this indulgence, you'll be forgiven. Or you can buy an indulgence for a dead relative, and they can be set free out of purgatory. One of John Tetzel's favorite sayings was, "When a coin in the coffer rings, a soul from purgatory springs." And you can see a picture there with his little coffer. And Martin Luther was not happy about this at all. He was very upset. He knew that it was okay for the church. They needed to collect money to build St. Peter's, but the way they were going about it was totally wrong. And this takes us to the first action that Martin Luther took in reforming the Catholic Church, was that he nailed his 95 Theses to the Wittenberg church door in Germany. I have a quote here from a book that I have read on Martin Luther, written by Merrill Daubigny, pertaining to the 95 Theses. Daubigny says, "Great was the attention they excited. They were read and passed from mouth to mouth. The university and the whole city were in commotion." So at this time, this was the brink of All Saints' Day, and there was people all over the place. Martin Luther lets out these 95 stinging blows against the Catholic Church, and everybody got to read them. They were spreading all over the place, and this was something that you didn't do. And in 1521, Martin Luther was summoned to appear before the German council at Worms, and it was here that Martin Luther gave his famous speech where he said, "Here I stand, I can do no other. May God help me." Martin Luther wouldn't back down. He was promptly excommunicated from the Catholic Church, and his friends knew what this could have brought for Martin Luther. He could have been burned at the stake, so they basically kidnapped him and took him to the Wartburg Castle. And it was here that we see the second action that Martin Luther took in reforming the church. Martin Luther translated the Bible from Latin into the common language so people just like us could read the Bible. And back then, this was something that you did not want to do, because the Catholic Church believed that only the priest could interpret Scripture. But Martin Luther wanted the common man to have the Bible, and he translated the Bible in 1522. This was the first publication from Latin into German. Martin Luther reformed the Catholic Church of the 16th century by performing two actions The first one was he nailed his 95 Theses to the church door in Wittenberg. The second action was he translated the New Testament into the common language, which was German. So because of Martin Luther's boldness to stand up for the truth, he reshaped Christianity, not only in the 16th century, but in our day today.